This is an update on my alcohol-free journey so far. I'm still alcohol-free as of 25 November 2022. My last drink was November 22nd, 2022 at Moot's Pizzeria in downtown Detroit. I still remember the drink. I don't have a picture of it, but it was a pint of some kind of IPA, some kind of local Michigan IPA. I made a video a couple months after that. I think it was 60, 90 days of sobriety. That was about the time where I reached the mental peak. When I first stopped drinking, I had almost like an euphoric feeling, a bunch of epiphanies, where I had been drinking for so long, for 18 years, that I think the longest break that I had without a drink was 7 months. I've been drinking for so long that I didn't quite understand what life was like without alcohol. And mind you, I was somebody who was drinking maybe 3 or 4 times a week at that point, 3 or 4 drinks per week. I may have had one drink, 1 or 2 during the week, and then 1 or 2 during the weekends. I had drank a lot more in the past when I was younger, but at the point where I stopped drinking, I was at around 3 to 4 drinks per week. So I wasn't the heaviest drinker out there, and still within 1, 2, 3 months of not consuming any alcohol whatsoever, it was as if my mind completely cleared and the floodgates of creativity, of being able to get more things done faster, more efficiently, and better, and the self-reflection came in all in a torrent, like the dam opened up and the waters came rushing in. It was an incredible feeling. I'm not gonna say things have been terrible, but things have been more at a steady state. I still feel clear. I still have a lot of mental clarity, but I think that I've grown accustomed to this level of mental clarity, this level of mental efficiency and effectiveness and overall productivity, to where now this is my new normal. This is my baseline. I never realized how much alcohol dominated my life since 2004, since I really started making the conscious decision to be a drinker, to be someone who consumed alcohol. I never understood how much alcohol dominated my life. My whole life in college revolved around going out and drinking on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and sometimes during the week. Everybody that I hung out with, all my, I don't want to call them friends, I would say more like acquaintances. All of my acquaintances, that was what we surrounded our life with, especially during my first 2 years of college, before I started meeting some of the people who now I would consider my friends. But you can't see it when you're in the throes of drinking all the time, you're in the throes of partying, of trying to impress people and trying to be accepted by people, then that's all you see. You don't necessarily see how much you're thinking about alcohol, how much you're thinking about the logistics of getting alcohol. When you're underage, you're thinking about, oh, I need someone who's 21 to buy me alcohol. You're thinking about all these things, and you don't realize that that is what's dominating your thoughts. Your thoughts don't consist of, how can I study to get a better grade on this paper on Monday? Or how can I take this test? How can I study for this test to get a good grade? How can I write this paper better? How can I apply for some internships this summer? How can I apply for some scholarships? I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about going to the next party, of impressing people and trying to be accepted by other people. That's the damage that I think that alcohol did to me. Was not so much the drinking, even though I'm sure that I'm gonna be paying for, and I think that I did pay physically for all the drinking that I did, especially in college. It's not so much the physical damage, because when you're young, you can recover if you get it under control. It's the thinking, it's the mental damage that it does, because it completely, for me, it completely subsumed all of my thoughts. It completely subsumed my thoughts, especially on the weekends, and sometimes even during the week. I would be thinking about, what can we do to get to get beer for this party? How are we going to get this keg over here? All the logistics of it, not to mention the driving. Worrying about if you've had too much to drink to get behind the wheel, all that stuff. Especially when I was younger, it dominates everything. And even into my mid to late 20s, when I had just joined the Army and I was hanging out with folks, we would be going out to Austin when I lived in Texas. And even then, all the logistics revolved around drinking alcohol and then making sure that we could get back to wherever we were staying safely. And sometimes I wonder, I don't regret those times per se, because I still talk to some of those people now. And I think that we've all changed and found out what's really important in life. And it's definitely not drinking alcohol to excess like we were doing. I believe that we could have done a lot better things. We could have been doing more productive things, and we could have drank, but we could have also, maybe we could have volunteered. Maybe we could have given back to the community. Maybe instead of going out and drinking on a Saturday night, we could have gone on a road march, or we could have done some kind of physical activity to replace the alcohol, something like that. These are thoughts that you have once you start getting older, and especially as far as alcohol is concerned, when you quit drinking alcohol, at least from my perspective, these are some of the thoughts that I've been having as I've released alcohol. I've reflected on the times that I drank, and these thoughts keep coming up, these reflections. It's not the whole shoulda, coulda, woulda thing. It's what could I have done? What was the opportunity cost of drinking? And more importantly, always thinking about the logistics of drinking, always trying to work the drinking into the plan, unknowingly and subconsciously obsessing about programming drinking into my life like it was really that important. A lot of people who watch the channel know that I just moved from the Detroit, Michigan area to the Northern Virginia area. If there was ever a time that I wanted to say relapse, that's probably the best word to use, relapse on my sobriety and to start drinking again, it was this past summer of 2023 during this move. I've done a lot of permanent change of station, PCS moves in my career. I've been in the Army now for 15 years. This was the most stressful one. It was the most stressful one for a situation that I can't talk about. But if any situation would have caused me to drink, or that I could have used as an excuse to go back and relapse and start to drink, it would have been this situation, because of how much stress it put on me, because of how much stress it caused me, and how much extra work I had to do. And I felt like I was by myself doing it. Extra work that I had to do in order to make this PCS move happen. It was a lot of extra work. In my mind, it was a lot of unnecessary work, but it happened. The stressful situation came up. I hadn't dealt with a situation like that before. And it was a better time than ever to go back on my laurels, go back on my commitment, and start drinking again. But paradoxically, because it was the best time to start drinking, in my mind, it was also the worst time to start drinking, because the last thing that you want to do when you're stressed out, the last thing you want to do is to go back into alcohol, especially if you quit for a certain amount of time. If you're already feeling bad, if you're already having a tough time, going back into the alcohol might make you feel good for like 10 minutes, but then the morning after you're going to feel terrible. There's a Stoic saying that I love. It's that when you wake up, one of your first thoughts should be, how do I want to feel at the end of today? How do I want to feel at the end of today? And I knew that if I had picked up a beer, or I had gone and gotten some liquor and tried to drown my sorrows in the bottle, I might have felt good for like 5 minutes. But at the end of the day, when I went to bed, I would have felt like a complete failure, because I would have gone back on what I wanted to do, on what I set out to do. So I'm proud to report that despite that situation getting under my skin several times, and despite me being completely stressed out about it multiple times, to the point where I thought about drinking a few times and going back on my commitment to myself, I didn't do it. I stayed alcohol free. Instead, I leaned on exercising, I leaned on journaling, I leaned on getting out in nature and walking around. Even though I was by myself, I was out there in nature walking around on the many outstanding trails in the Michigan area, and seeing time by myself in nature, seeing time by myself as a blessing, to where I could think about what was going on, think about what I had in front of me, what was happening at that point, and using it as a time for self-reflection. I love waking up on a Saturday morning and not being hungover, even if it's just a slight headache like I would have the past couple years I was drinking, when my drinking really started to taper off. Even having that little bit of headache can remind you that you went overboard, can remind you that you drank in excess. And it also disrupts your productivity, and it makes you essentially worthless for the rest of the day. If you had any plans that involved any kind of hard exercise or getting in the car and going out and doing some kind of fun activity, it's going to be harder to do that when you're hungover, and it just doesn't go away right then and there. You can chug some coffee, you can chug some water, but I have never found, after all these years of drinking, after almost 20 years of drinking, I've never found any remedy to a hangover that works to where you can function like you would have functioned had you not drank the night before. I don't think it exists. Some people have these magic elixirs out here where they claim some soup or some tea can cure a hangover. Maybe it works for them. I tried them all. It never worked for me. I love waking up on a Saturday or Sunday morning and looking at my Fitbit and seeing that I got over 8 hours of good quality sleep. You can never do that when you've been drinking. Your sleep is going to be terrible. That was one of the first things that improved instantaneously for me. A couple of days after stopping the drinking was my sleep started getting better and better and better, and it continues to stay above an 80. I get at least 7 hours of sleep every night, and it's good quality sleep. And you can't get that if you drink alcohol, especially drinking alcohol to excess. Having the sleep in my back pocket, sleep is one of the most important things that you can optimize. There's research out there that's proving beyond a reasonable doubt, convincingly, that sleep is one of the most important things you can do. I just finished reading Peter Attia's Outlive. It's a fantastic book. I read it on Audible. And the one thing in that book about sleep specifically that stuck out to me was Peter Attia was a guy who always thought that he could go without sleep, and he got into a lot of trouble by thinking that when he was in his residency, he would go like 40 or 50 hours without sleeping. And he was consulting with one of his colleagues one time who was trying to convince him that sleep was super important, a former Navy SEAL. And then in the book, Peter Attia writes, he says that the guy asked him a question, and the guy said, "Hey, Peter, if sleep wasn't important, then at this point, why wouldn't have evolution corrected for it and made it so that we don't need sleep as human beings, or every other animal doesn't need any sleep?" And that's a question that nobody can really answer. So that's a plug for sleep. Sleep is something that I try to optimize, and it's nearly impossible to do that if you're drinking all the time, or even drinking during the weekend. One bad night of sleep can have a terrible effect over the next 2 to 3 days. And I found out the hard way after a long time, nearly 2 decades of drinking alcohol. A few other reasons that I love being alcohol free is that I'm always ready to drive. Always ready to drive. I never have to worry about if I've been drinking too much, because I'm not drinking at all. I never have to worry about getting a DUI. It is one of the most reassuring feelings to be able to go out somewhere, take my car, and not have to worry about getting pulled over by the police for a DUI, because a DUI can ruin your life, especially in the military. You get a DUI, most of the time you're going to get chaptered out, or you're going to get kicked out. I've seen plenty of promising officers and NCOs and soldiers get kicked out of the Army because they got a DUI. Not to mention that it costs anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000, and you become a burden on your family, your friends, or whoever has to drive you around to wherever you need to go, all your court dates and all your driving school appointments, just because of one bad decision of getting behind the wheel while you're drunk. I think the thing that I love the most about being alcohol free is not being dependent on a substance, not being dependent on anything. I'm not dependent on any substances other than what other human beings are dependent on: food, water, the basics. I'm not dependent on any drugs or any pain medications or any alcohol or nothing like that. And I think that if you're not dependent on any of those outside sources, you can find your strength from within. You can find your strength from your hobbies, your activities, and things of that nature. Then I think that it's a lot better than being dependent on a substance and getting to the point where you need that substance to function. You need that substance to interact with people. You need that substance to feel normal. I feel normal right now. This is my baseline, and that's without any outside substances or any mind-altering drugs. Some people have asked me if I ever will drink again, and I'm not sure. At this point, and at the time of this recording, I don't see a necessity to ever go back to drinking alcohol regularly. I don't know if at a New Year's party or some kind of special celebration, if I might have a sip of alcohol after my year mark. I don't think I would, because at this point, after all this time, after 10 months, consuming alcohol for me has become incongruent with who I want to be and what my goals are. And that's not trying to put myself on a pedestal, because everybody is different when it comes to alcohol. And that leads me to my next point, is that some people can handle alcohol physically and mentally better than other people. And I think for me, the way that my mind works, the way that I approach the world and think about things, plus my history of how I've handled alcohol up to this point, I don't think that alcohol and I are a good fit. I just don't think we're a good fit. But I think that everybody has to make that assessment for themselves. When I started drinking 18 years ago, I blindly jumped in because I was running from my past. I was running from some painful things that happened in my past. I just jumped right in. I never made an assessment of who I was, my biological, physiological makeup. I was too young to do that. I was too young to even think at that level. I just jumped right in and started drinking and started partying and doing all that stuff. Most young people do that. Most young people don't make that assessment. It's the young people who have goals, who are thinking at 18 or 19, who are thinking like 30 and 35-year-olds and thinking high level, who make that assessment. And I would always see those people. The people who I walked with when I graduated from college, I didn't know any of those people, because those people were the people who graduated in 4 years. Most of the people who I went to school with at Longwood University, who I entered with, they either didn't finish or it took them 5, 6, 7 years to graduate because of the partying. I didn't know anybody that I walked with except for the people who were older than me, who had taken like 5 or 6 years to graduate. And that's not a knock on them. It's a testament to how your environment can keep you from being as productive, efficient, and effective as possible, and how it can stifle your goals. For me to graduate, because I started partying and got such poor grades during my first 2 years of college, I had to go to school. I went to school for 3 years straight after my first year. 3 years straight, summer school, all that stuff, just so I could graduate in 4 years. And then I got my act together because I slowed down the drinking. And I slowed down the party, and I met some people who had similar goals and who actually helped me, and I helped them, and we helped each other to the finish line, right? So yeah, I don't know if I'll ever go back to drinking again. To tell you the truth, I'm scared to go back to drinking again, because I don't want to open that door. I don't want to open that door because I know how I am, and I know how I am with alcohol, and alcohol and I are just not a good mix. All right, that's it for today's video. I know this channel is about jump rope and fitness, but I care about everybody who watches the channel. I care about your physical and your mental well-being. I care about every single one of you, and I appreciate all your support. That's why I made this video. I'm sharing my experience with alcohol, how I broke free of it, and I don't consider myself an alcoholic. I've made a lot of terrible mistakes while drinking, but I didn't have a medical dependence on alcohol. I hadn't gotten to that point yet. So imagine if you were worse than me, how much of a hold alcohol has on your life, because it had quite a hold on my life. And I don't consider myself an alcoholic from a medical standpoint. I would think about that, make your own assessment. Everybody's different. I'm not out here trying to evangelize for not drinking alcohol. I have no problem with alcohol per se. I just have a problem with my relationship, my past relationship with alcohol, and how my decision to drink alcohol in the way that I did probably held me back because of the opportunity cost that it caused. I spent a lot of time drinking, a lot of time planning for drinking, and a lot of time recovering from drinking. And if I had had all that time back and I put that time back toward more fruitful endeavors, I think that my life would be even better than it is today.